this, and this is a Q&A. But before we start with the Q&A, let me just talk about this. I did finally, after he's been on here forever, but Steve DeMarco, who I hope most of you are subscribed to, I finally got to see him wrestle. I finally was able to go to one of his shows and see him wrestle. Wasn't able to meet him, though, because the guy I was with, he wanted to leave kind of, I would say early, but he had somewhere else he needed to be, and so we had to leave kind of in a hurry, so I wasn't able to actually talk to him and meet him, and I feel bad about that, because I would have really liked to have talked to him for a little while. But got to see him, and I got to say that him and the guy he was wrestling put on my opinion, the most entertaining match of the night, and that's actually, and it's not a diss to anybody else that was wrestling that night, or tonight, or yesterday night, whenever you're going to see this. But more to the fact that they just worked really well together. And when you realize that you had a bull rope match on this card and a hardcore match with all sorts of plunder, it says a lot. They did a really good job of just entertaining the fans. It was a very entertaining match to watch, and probably, I would say, maybe the most interactive match of the night, and that speaks wonders. But he's also, for those of you that do not know, he is associated now with a new organization as well here in Houston. And I know that there are some, not many, but I know there are some people around the Houston area that do watch my videos. And if you go to his page, and I will put, I'll put the actual, he actually made a YouTube page for this organization, and I'll put it up. And the first video is on my page now. And if you go there, you can see that. And it's a very good video, and actually makes me want to go to the show. Not that I think I'm going to be able to go to the show, but if I can, I would really like to go. And that video really helped kind of sell me on a lot of the characters. I thought it was very well done for how it was done. So go check that out. I'll put a link in the description. And so there we go with that. So let's get started, and we will start with the question I missed last time. I did how many videos, and I didn't miss this is the first question I missed. If those of you that have watched my videos for a long time know, I used to miss questions all the freaking time. So there we go. What are your thoughts on Colt Cabana's status in the WWE? I don't like it, because a lot of us felt like Colt Cabana was perfect fit for the WWE, given the fact that he's more of a comic character. And then the WWE got a hold of him and then felt like, well, we don't want him to be a comic character or comedic or any of that, and just didn't feel like they know how to use him right. Though it looks like they may be putting him in a role where he's an announcer now, I hear, and he might be the announcer for the new WGN show. I've heard rumors about, not that that's definite, but I've heard rumors about that too. I will say this, if they're not going to do anything with him soon, you know, this is one of my big things with their developmental. I think after a year, you have to cut guys loose, because if you're not, if after a year you go, okay, can we bring this guy up? No. We bring this person up? No. Cut them loose. And let them go somewhere else. Maybe they'll latch on somewhere else, learn their craft a little bit better, and you can always bring them back. That's just always been my philosophy on that. So there we go with that. So let's go on to the next question. What are your opinions on Larry Sweeney? Sweeney's mic skills are extremely impressive, and his wrestling ability is underrated. Why hasn't TNA or WWE capitalized on it yet? I have no idea why TNA, though. I will figurize that in a minute. But WWE is just not big on managers anymore. And I think that is a shame, because I think there are definitely guys out there that could utilize being with a manager. There are guys definitely that have a presence and are very good in the ring, and are even good at working a crowd, but they're not good on the mic. And I think that sometimes they need, and then you have guys that just don't have some of those other elements that they need a manager for, as far as being an entertaining act. And I think that is something that WWE is sorely missing, and I would love to see the WWE use more of those things. As far as TNA, my best guess is because the WWE doesn't have it, so they don't feel like they should have it. They had managers for a while, and like I said, if they really wanted to be different from the WWE, they would actually bring managers back and utilize managers, because I think that's something that is greatly missing in pro wrestling right now. And Sweeney is amazing. He is that. There we go. With the recent release of Petey Williams from TNA, I was wondering, what do you think will be his next move, and what do you think he has to be done with him in order to succeed outside of TNA, whether it be in WWE or ROH. I think he could go to ROH right now and be fine. A year ago, I would not have said that, but in the last year, he has impressed me a bit more. Not that I think he would be a main eventer, but I think he'd be a good addition as kind of a middle-of-the-road guy in their organization. WWE, he's just too small, and of course, if he was going to keep the Canadian Destroyer, there are maybe only a handful of guys he'd be able to use that move on, which is the problem with that move. So, there you go. I've always felt that it doesn't matter what you can do in the ring that counts, but whether how you use what you can do. For example, I feel Rowdy Piper was a better worker than, say, Shelton Benjamin, because while Shelton is a better athlete, he can't get me emotionally involved like Piper could. Another example would be Austin, who had his most exciting, most memorable matches while he was most limited. What he could do, what are your opinions on the subject? Well, to Shelton's defense, and while I agree with you, you're also comparing Shelton to one of the best wrestlers ever, and particularly one of the best guys when it came to working a crowd. So that's that. I will agree with you. But I think I think there are a lot of guys that don't realize you can do less and do more as far as working with a crowd. So I would agree with you there. I don't exactly agree with Austin, because I do think Austin was actually better before his neck injury, and he could carry guys to good matches, and he didn't have to have a guy kind of have a good match with him to have a great match. I think he could go out there and have a great match with a guy who was not as good as him, and I think after his neck injury that wasn't necessarily the case. So that's the one thing I would... But I do agree. I think that it's what you can do with what you can do. It's more important than actually what you do in the ring that counts. So there you go. Do you think the WWE would ever consider going back to the branded exclusive pay-per-views? Nope. A pay-per-view can usually have about 6 or 7 matches in it. You have to have all 3 world titles defended. Well, that's not entirely true. Then you need to have your main event guys in other matches. That is true. I can't even remember the last time the tag titles or US IC title was even defended on a pay-per-view. I realize it may not get as high-profile buy rate, but at the same time, it can be helped out guys over more and have them become better earners in WWE and possibly make the WWE more money in the long run. The reason why they did away with it is because the SmackDown brand did not get necessarily good buy rates, and the Raw brand did, and then when they combined, they actually did get better buy rates with them combined after they did the brand split as far as pay-per-views go. My one thing with this would be, because I don't agree with it, is that the thing is, if they would use the tag teams and the tag team titles and the Intercontinental title and the US title better, and it would strengthen those titles and just make those titles mean more, you could have them on TV, and it would seem like you were getting a more important match on TV, and that within itself would build up the guys that have those titles. They don't necessarily have to be on pay-per-view for that to happen. And really, you could center the pay-per-views around your main event talent, and I think that would actually make the pay-per-views better, in my opinion. Maybe have one tag team title match, a pay-per-view. I think that would be okay, but that's kind of where I would go with that. I was wondering if you watch a lot of PWG. I've heard you talk about ROH a lot in your videos, and even Chikara a good bit, but I haven't heard you talk much about PWG. And there's a reason for that. I personally think that a lot of stuff that they have done this year has been on par with ROH when it comes to the in-ring wrestling, and I just don't think PWG gets talked about enough on YouTube or in general. I would agree with that. Part of the reason being is because I think it's hard, for me personally, and this is why I don't review PWG cards or PWG shows that much, is because when I watch PWG, I do not like it as much as I should. I can watch a match and go, wow, this is probably a really good match, and I just, for whatever reason, I don't like it. And there's matches that I can go out and see that other people really liked them, and I didn't like it. And I think it has to do with the atmosphere of the shows. I think there's something about the atmosphere that just turns me off, and so I don't normally like it, which is kind of odd because the atmosphere is in some ways a lot like Chikara's, but Chikara I really enjoy. So I'm not exactly sure why it is. There's just something with me, and that's why I do not review a lot of PWG stuff. I would agree that PWG does put on good matches. Myself, there's a lot of matches they put on that I do like, but there's a lot of matches that a lot of people go crazy for, and I watch, and I don't think they're that big of a deal. Even though I can look and say, I think I can see what somebody saw in this, but there's just something about their shows that just turns me off for some reason. I don't know what it is, and that's why I don't review their shows. I would agree. I think that they don't get talked a lot about here on YouTube, and I think maybe in general, but I think part of that has to do with the fact that you know, they had a lot of shit. Oftentimes, their DVDs take a while to come out. And I think that's one of the things that hurts them in some ways, where they'll have a show that's a really big show that people will talk about, and then by the time it ends up coming out, people have kind of forgotten about it. You know, I mean, this year's DDT4 was okay. I thought that it wasn't as good as I thought it should have been. I thought it was good, but I didn't think it was as good as it should have been, in my opinion. I haven't seen Bola from this year yet, because it did happen happened later than it was supposed to, and I just haven't had a chance to see it yet. I hear it's pretty good, but I haven't seen it, so there you go. What do you think about Low-Key joining the WWE, and what is the deal with that? Is he going to join for sure, or still in development? Finally, how do you think he would be used? Thanks, appreciate it. Apparently, he was brought in because Rey Mysterio, they have something planned for Rey Mysterio, some sort of feud, and Rey Mysterio apparently handpicked him to bring in and be the guy for him to feud with. And so I think he's still in development, probably just kind of telling him what he can't and can't do in the ring. But I think he'll be fine, and we'll just have to kind of see where it goes. Now that Tyson Kidd has debuted, do you think WWE would push him to be the next Bret or Owen Hart due to the similar training with Stu Hart? Also, do you see WWE to make a tag team with D.H. Smith and hopefully carry the company, i.e. the Hardys and Priceless? Apparently D.H. Smith does not want to be with any of the other Harts. That's why the tag team is there, and that's why the new Hart Foundation thing was dropped. The last time they were going to do it was because he wants to be part of Legacy, and so and then they stuck Tyson on ECW. So, you know, I think eventually he'll get pushed. I thought he had a pretty good match on ECW. If him and Jamie Noble are actually able to go out there and actually put on, you know, if they give them time to go out there and put on good matches and they have a little feud, I think that'll be awesome, and I think would really help both guys. So there you go. Do you think it hurts TNA that they acknowledge WWE and always seem to mention WWE, while the WWE never acknowledges TNA? For example, when Christian returned to ECW, all they said was that he was gone for 3 years and that they had not seen him. Not once did they say TNA. The thing is, I think that TNA can mention WWE. It's the way they mention the WWE, and it's the fact they mention them all the time. There are times when you can just mention them because it's the right thing to do, and then there are times such as what apparently is going to happen when we do this. They do this empty arena match. Apparently, they're going to reference the Mick Foley Rock match from the Super Bowl, that took place in the halftime of the Super Bowl. That's stupid, particularly when you don't have to. When you could instead, and this would be better, talk about Terry Funk versus Jerry Lawler, which is a very legendary match. You could hype that up. You could have Jim Cornette, because Jim Cornette absolutely loved that match. He thought it was the most amazing thing he ever saw the first time he saw it, or so the legend says. So why would you have him talk about how great and wonderful that match was and compare it to that instead of continually going back to the WWE, comparing it to WWE when you don't have to, because it's not going to be as good as, you know, you're basically saying it's like that, but no one's going to think it's going to be as good, in my opinion. I think they have to be more selective of when they talk about the WWE and a little more guarded, but That's just me. Hey, Truthslayer, I'm pretty sure you know, but in 2005 and 2006, Mike Tenay was pushing for an X Division Tag Team belt, which would have given new life to the fledgling X Division. But Jeff Jarrett, like the idiot, nixed the idea like the idiot he is, saying that having a lot of titles in the company decreases the value of the belts. But in just last year, TNA introduced the company to the useless Legends Championships. What are your thoughts? Actually, I agree with Jarrett in the fact that they didn't need the X Division belts. I have gone on record even on here and said that I don't think that they need the X Division belt. I think the X Division belt needs to be used as purely a secondary belt, and that's it. I don't agree with it being its own division. I've never bought into any of that. And I do agree with him. If you have too many belts, it decreases the value of the belts. And but you know, which is right. I mean, look at the Legends Championship. It's pretty freaking useless. It makes no point. If there was ever going to be a storyline with it, it never wound up actually being a storyline. Just stupidity. Do you think that a TNA wrestler will ever become a WWE World or even ECW champ? If so, who? We already had one. His name was CM Punk. Yes, he was in TNA back in the day. As far as a probably bigger name people that people associate with TNA, I don't know. It would depend on guys who were brought in at some point and what the WWE saw in them and what they didn't see in them and that sort of thing, if they were able to catch on, all of those sort of things. I mean, if you told people back, I would say before Benoit, I would say even when Benoit first joined the WWE, that he would be a champion, or that him and Eddie Guerrero would both be champions in that company, I think people would go insane. That will never happen. They'll probably have a lot of success, but they'll never be belts. Vince will never give them belts. So, just kind of keep that in mind. Do you think that having some wrestlers in the WWE Hall, not having some wrestlers in the WWE Hall of Fame due to politics, i.e. Randy Savage, hurts the credibility of the Hall of Fame? Well, they always call it the WWE Hall of Fame, so I mean they can always fall back on that. I agree there should be some guys on there, but you have to remember there's some guys at WWE, you know, Randy Savage for political reasons, but there's also guys on the other side who probably should be in the Hall of Fame that don't want in the Hall of Fame. So, you know, I don't know if it hurts the credibility of it, because I don't look at it as a credibility thing as much as once a year they pay homage to, you know, two wrestlers of the past. That's the way I always look at it. I don't actually look at it as a true Hall of Fame, so there you go. What's your opinion of the relatively short lifespan of stables and tag teams in today's wrestling compared to 70s and 80s when stables and tag teams lasted for years? I think it's stupid. I think that you need more tag teams. I think tag team wrestling is a good thing. I think it allows you to use talent more efficiently. I think the same thing goes for stables. I think that it's just, part of the thing is you have to remember WWE, because if you look in Japan and Mexico, elsewhere there are stables and there are tag teams, but in the WWE there's not. And one of the reasons is because Vince isn't big on tag team wrestling, and I think if you're not big on tag team wrestling, you're probably not going to be too big on stables either, for the same reason. So there you go. Do you like scaffold matches, and what is your opinion on them? I personally do not. I will say that the only one that I've ever thought was any good, or I shouldn't say any good, but the best one I've ever seen that I would consider a scaffold match. I know there's matches that involve scaffolds, but I wouldn't really call them scaffold matches. They're probably better, but the one that I would actually call a scaffold match would be the first Elevation X. I would say that was probably the best one I've ever seen. And if you've ever seen that match, you know that that's saying a lot, because that match isn't great. It's a good match. It's not a great match. But every scaffold match I've ever seen isn't very good. And the reason for that is because everyone knows the spot's going to come, where the guy's going to fall off the scaffold. That's what everyone's waiting for. And it's dangerous, and most guys don't know how to tease it right, and it just usually doesn't work, and it's usually fairly boring. So there you go. Do you think both Edge and Chris Jericho do you think both Edge and Chris Jericho are legit main eventers? I've heard many on here saying that they are overrated and they're just mid-carders, one of the groups being Wrestling Roundtable. But what are your thoughts overall on them being main eventers? I think Chris Jericho is a legit main eventer. I've said this before. I thought that was the reason why TNA should have hired him when they had the chance, because I think he's a guy that people would turn in to see. Now, I would also say Kurt Angle's a guy who I would call a legit main eventer, but of course people have not turned in to watch Kurt Angle. But I don't think Kurt Angle's the type of guy that you turn in to watch. It doesn't mean he's not necessarily a main eventer, but he's not a guy that you necessarily turn in to watch. Though they did at first, if you go back and look, when him and Joe first went on it, those first 3 pay-per-views did very well. Or the first 2 did very well. No, the first one. The first one did very well, and then they tapered off. As that first pay-per-view did very well with both of them on it. So I would say yes. And Edge, I would say, yeah, I would call him a legit main eventer. I think that I would say probably over the last year and a half, he's probably gotten that. I would say when he first started, when he started feuding with Cena at the start, I would say not so much. But I think after his feud with The Undertaker, very much that he became a main eventer. So there you go. Let's see. Hey Truthslayer, I just want to say that your videos are awesome. I just wanted to ask you, if ECW were to add a second title, what do you think it should be, and who do you think the first person should be hold of it? I don't think they should have a second title. So there you go. Do you think Jack Swagger's speech problem will interfere with his success in the WWE? Nope, because it hasn't yet, and in fact they are using it to help him get over, so I don't think it will ever hurt him very much at all. Do you think the WWE should have another bash with the pirate gimmick? Jolly Roger used to be amusingly pull out of his telescope and look around the arena in the middle of a match, and the Cutthroat crew do the gimmick nicely, including a row of the boat. Funny. This is from Oliver Scott, by the way. You know what? I think probably they should, because I think, to be honest, I thought Paul Burchill as the pirate was actually worked. And I think most people thought it worked in a weird kind of way. Somehow he was able to make it work. But I think the WWE didn't want it to work. I think they just wanted to put a crazy gimmick out there. And then it started to work, and they didn't know what to do. Kind of like Eugene. Eugene, to me, was an amazing gimmick. And I think that if they had gone the right way, would have made a lot of money. Particularly if you would have actually treated it with a little bit of respect and said that, you know, here was this mentally handicapped person who, you know, had all of these faults, but he could do one thing really well, and that was he knew pro wrestling. He was just like a pro wrestling savant, like the original gimmick was, and I think it would have worked out very well, where the comedy would have been when he wasn't wrestling, when, you know, pre-match and all that. But once he got in the ring, well, then the comedy ended, and he was actually very good. And I think that, for whatever reason, Paul Burchill was able to make the pirate gimmick work, and the WWE seemed to like comedy gimmicks until they work, and then they don't like them anymore. So there you go. Over the last few months, Impact has had some of the highest rated shows in its history. Do you think that this shows the IWC is wrong and Russo really doesn't draw in a way fans? I can understand the argument TNA is not doing enough to move to the next level, but I think it's evident that they are doing enough to keep their current viewers entertained. I'm just tired of people saying 2005 2006 was so much better, and everyone's saying that the show is currently unwatchable. Actually, while they have gotten their best ratings, they've also gotten some of their worst. And the Main Event Mafia episode is probably the best example of this. They got one of their highest rated segments they ever got. They also got one of the lowest rated segments they had ever gotten in a very long time. The problem is, I think people are turning in to a degree, but these people are not turning into buying the pay-per-views. And I would imagine, because Dave Meltzer on the last radio show I heard him on talked about the fact that he had the buy rate numbers, and for the last couple of TNA pay-per-views, and or at least estimated numbers, and he said they were extremely bad. That basically the numbers had nosedived since they had kind of gone in this new direction of, if you don't know, they basically are going to have like an off pay-per-view, like a throwaway pay-per-view, and then a pay-per-view that actually means something. And apparently this has not worked at all, and apparently that they have tanked. Apparently, not totally horrendous, but apparently they're somewhere that they're not. Apparently they're not lower than 14,000, but apparently they're somewhere around that number. and that's pretty bad. I would imagine probably next week he'll probably release the numbers, because he kind of talked about it, and I'm sure a lot of people are now curious of exactly what those numbers are. But yeah, I would say that it's not really working. I think that I think the people, and if you look at like this last week's episode, people turned in the first hour and then they started turning out. And that's not what you want. If anything, you want the audience to grow. The audience is peaking and then they're leaving, which means they're seeing that they're waiting to see something, then they're seeing what they want to see, and then they're turning the show off. So you can't just look at that one number. You've also got to look at the numbers in between, and you also have to look at the pay-per-view numbers, because ultimately that's where Impact is going to make their most money. It's not on TV. It's on the pay-per-view numbers, and the pay-per-view numbers are not there. So there you go. And also, like last week, I would say part of it is I think that if you look at the Main Event Mafia episode, that episode, there was a lot of talk about on the internet for that episode. It had a lot of buzz for various reasons, and I think people turned in for that. You also look at this last week's episode, the fact that it was coming off of a pay-per-view that nobody bought. So I'm going to imagine that a lot of people probably turned in just to see what happened. Probably also helped the rating a little bit too. So there you go. You said in an earlier video that you have no faith in TNA booking Samoa Joe. At what point did you lose faith in them booking him? Probably, actually, I would say it was before Kurt Angle got there. Then I think after Kurt Angle got there, I think they had absolutely no idea what to do with him, because I think Kurt Angle, looking back on it, I really feel Kurt Angle got the push Joe was supposed to get. But they went with Kurt Angle because Kurt Angle was the name, instead of using both of them or doing a push with both of them and having their feud just continue for like a year. I think that would have really worked. But anyway, that is that. Anyways, with that, I am out. Remember, I'm going to have the video I was talking about with Steve DeMarco. That will be in the link. Go check it out. If you live in Houston and you think you can make the show, I definitely recommend going and checking it out. With that, I am out. Later.